Yeah, I'm about to say, he had me in the first half. What?
Yeah, they had us the first half, I'm not gonna lie.
That's cursed. Get that off the screen. Generic Control in the TheDuckgoesmoo here, back with some more TF2 versus TFC. Today we have the evolution of the Pyro, and at the time recording this, like I said last week, he should be uploading one very soon. He uploaded the evolution of the Sniper 7 hours ago, so that will be out next week. Patrons get the videos there early. You just got last week's video, which was the Scout. I'll leave it right up there, also linked down below in the description. Also, a playlist on my channel with all my other TF2 videos. I think on Friday I uploaded TF2 versus Overwatch explained with food. I haven't recorded that video yet. That might be the next video I record. I don't know. It's probably going to go up on Friday. Patrons got it a day early. And they allowed me to have a paywall on the channel, so I couldn't do this without them. I read every single one of your comments, leave them down below. Everybody was very surprised that, like, you know, the Scout was, like, so much I didn't know about Scout. How Scout, like, you know, can capture points twice as fast. Had absolutely no idea. But it's a very informative video. Thank you so much for the support you've shown. I hope you're subscribed. I read every single comment, so leave some down below. Hope you're having a good day. I stream TF2 on Fridays, and I play it with viewers on Uncle Topia servers, so you're more than welcome to join. But let's go ahead and jump into the evolution of the Pyro, which is actually a class I kind of play the most. But let's jump on into it. Alright, I know he just dropped the Sniper. That'll be next week. Stay subscribed so you do not miss that. So, today we're going to be learning about the Pyro, though. And you all should support for these videos. Thank you so much. So much. Okay. After breakfast.
The matches between TF2 and TFC are currently tied at 1-1.
Oh, I was like, wait, is that Diva
for each game,
Overwatch?
And Pyro is going to be the
I haven't
tiebreaker
touched Overwatch in
between
like
Team
3 or 4
Fortress
years.
Classic and Team Fortress 2. And like Scout, this is another pair that we never really saw directly interact in the comics.
Nope.
But like the previous two videos, this isn't going to be about the Pyros as characters. It's purely going to be based on the stats and functionality of their weapons. So this is not a popularity contest. Because, I mean, it pretty much took until the TF2 comics for the TFC classes to even have any kind of individual personalities. And it did kind of mean retconning some things, because I don't think they planned the TFC Pyro being a woman when they made her sound like this.
Excuse me! I'm in need of medical attention!
She's got the voice of an angel.
Oh.
But for the other rules, there will also be no random crits.
Is Pyro actually a woman?
And no unlocks, for the most part. We do kind of break that
the
rule in this
spy
one,
though is next
but
level.
Generally, because TFC has no unlocks, we don't allow it. If TF2 classes could pick and choose different unlocks for each scenario, it would give an overwhelming advantage that we don't want to have.
Correct.
Weapon stats will also be taken at face value. These are two games from the same series and have similar enough mechanics that there's no need to try to artificially even things out. In fact, doing that would kind of ruin the whole thing.
Oh, it defeats
and not
purpose.
to break the illusion too much, but these videos are primarily about seeing how the classes change from one game to another. The versus aspect about this is just a fun framing device, so don't take it too seriously, okay?
Oh, people are gonna take it seriously.
Yeah, let's get started.
Also, TF2, but it's such an undying community. It's actually nuts.
Behind its mask, the Pyro. And in the blue corner, I fear no man, but this Pyro, she scares me. The other Pyro.
So TFC Pyro is actually a female.
The TF2 Pyro is tied for the third highest health in the game with Devilman at 175. The TFC Pyro is tied for the highest health in the game with Heavy Soldier at 100. And like all the classes in TFC,
medium
armor, but unlike Soldier and Heavy, she has the medium armor type rather than the heavy armor type. Medium armor absorbs 60% of damage taken, and the Pyro has 150 armor points. This effectively means that with full health and full armor, the TFC Pyro is able to take 250 damage before dying.
More tanky.
And that's almost as much health as the TF2 Pyro has when overhealed. So the original Pyro has a pretty clear advantage in round 1.
Yeah, you can't even, like,
for round number 2,
contest
that
one.
We have a tie. Both versions of Pyro run at the same speed of 100%.
Base speed. Okay, not looking good for TF2 Pyro.
Next, we're going to look at Pyro's general abilities.
Well, we know who's going to win the grenade round.
Immune to Afterburn, so they will not be ignited by fire-based weapons. However, the TFC Pyro is actually only resistant to Afterburn if she has armor. If the armor is depleted, you lose immunity. Which would make TF2 win this round, but if we're including the ability of bunny hopping here, then things do kind of go the other way.
Why?
Bunny hopping is a thing in TFC.
Pyro can bunny hop too?
For way more mobility than is normally available in TFC.
You can bunny hop with any class.
I do kind of feel like bunny hopping could be its own category on its own, but
that's a mobility thing.
Excessive, and it is a natural ability of every class, so I do think it's mostly fine to include here in abilities. And while a TF2
I would put it
Pyro
in the
does
mobility
have better Afterburn
speed.
The greatly increased mobility of bunny hopping pretty handily tips us to the TFC side.
It's not looking good for TF2 Heavy.
Speaking of things not
Pyro,
in the sequel,
I'm dumb.
we have the grenade round.
Ooh!
And yeah, this is basically a free round for TFC, but it's a necessary one to cover, so we'll just get it out of the way.
Yep,
Like the
TFC has
the
grenades.
Pyro has a regular hand grenade, which can deal a lot
Not
of
a
damage
concussion
in a
one.
fairly large radius.
That is
It can
gruesome.
also be used to grenade jump, though this does obviously damage the user. Pyro
It's not a
also has a
concussion
napalm grenade, which deals less direct damage than the hand grenade, but can ignite the ground and cause afterburn.
It's like a Molotov.
And yeah,
Oh,
this round does go
look
to
at
TFC
those
by
pixels,
default,
dude.
but if you're thinking ahead, the TF2 Pyro does have its own way to deal with grenades.
air blast.
I'm sure you already know, but we'll get to that later.
Air blast.
For the first weapons round, we really don't have
Melee.
anything very special.
Which TF2
TFC
wins
Pyro
like every
just
time.
has the crowbar, which functions identically to Scout and Heavy's crowbar, and the TF2 Pyro has the fire axe, which functions identically to Heavy's fists. And if we learned anything from those previous comparisons, it's that the crowbar
fire axe is gonna win.
is pretty bad.
It's
Up
terrible.
against a no armor Heavy with 100 health, it takes 6 hits and 2.02 seconds to kill. That's almost double the time it takes for
Almost
the fire
double.
axe, which is
Almost.
able to deal more than enough damage to kill a 100 health Big Earner Spy in 1.06 seconds
Big
with
Earner
only
Spy.
2 hits.
I use Big
Crowbar
Earner.
base swing
Thanks.
super fast,
Sounds
but its
meth.
horribly low damage makes it basically worthless. Though considering that Pyro has much better options at close range, melee damage isn't all that important. But even then, this is
Plus
still an
firing
easy win
speed
for
is
TF2.
such a bad thing. Because that means you have to land in more
Round
shots.
6 is another
You know?
repeat round from what we've seen before. And for
TF2.
a while, I actually thought the TFC Pyro had the double-barreled shotgun, but no. She
No,
only
it's a
has
single
the
barrel?
single barrel.
Which is
Which,
the
as
worst,
I pointed out the
the
previous
worst
two
thing
times
ever.
we've seen it, can only deal a max of 24 damage per shot if all its pellets connect. The
Have all
TF2
of them.
shotgun can deal almost 4 times more damage at close range with a max of 90 and can kill a 100 health class in 0.43 seconds compared to the single-barreled shotgun.
Yeah, that's a
2.02
lot better.
Seconds. And while I've made it pretty clear that I think a single-barreled shotgun is a horrible, nearly useless weapon, it might actually have
Nearly
some
useless.
use in this matchup.
How?
Don't get me wrong, the TF2 shotgun is still
What, the
infinitely
range?
better.
No.
But because there's no damage fall off in TFC, it
No.
can actually be decent for getting a small amount of chip damage because
No.
unlike the other classes,
no.
TF2 Pyro really doesn't have any ranged options by default, and the single-barreled shotgun actually does have a better damage output at longer ranges than the TF2
At longer
shotgun.
range.
So this may be the only time I say this, but the single-barreled shotgun isn't totally useless here. The TF2 shotgun is still much more powerful at the shotgun's ideal range.
Also, who
though,
uses
and that's what really
shotgun
matters.
as
So,
Pyro
yeah, TF2
secondary?
wins. This next round will be for something
Afterburn.
that I want to cover before we get to the next two weapons, and that's Afterburn. In both games, fire-based weapons will continue to cause damage for a period after hitting an enemy. In TF2, Afterburn deals
How
4
long
damage
it-
per tick and hits 2 times a second. The damage of Afterburn won't stack from multiple sources, though the duration of it can. In TFC, Afterburn can stack from multiple sources, which sounds like it could be good, but it only deals 2 damage to start. And it gets worse, because Afterburn in TFC only inflicts damage 1 time per second, meaning if you're on fire for 4 seconds, you will only take 8 damage of Afterburn, where in TF2, you would have taken 32. Basically, you
That's
could kind of think of it
way
like
different.
all Afterburn in TFC has the Degreaser's Afterburn, but it could also stack with other
Sure.
Afterburn. Though that does mean you would need 4 sources
So
of
TF2
fire
wins
for it to
this.
even reach the same damage per second of TF2's Afterburn.
Basic.
The Afterburn in TFC
Yeah.
does block more of the target screen, which I guess could be a little bit helpful, but I doubt it really has that much of an impact on their aim. This whole round really isn't all that relevant because both Pyros aren't going to be affected by it for the most part, but I think it makes it pretty clear that Afterburn in TF2 is way stronger.
Way stronger. Not even
For
close.
round 8, we're going to be breaking out
Incendiary
rules
cannon
a
versus
little
flare
bit
gun.
by comparing
What
the
about
TFC
the
Pyro's
scorch shot?
incendiary cannon to the flare gun in TF2. I guess going forward, if there's some kind of direct parallel between a TFC weapon and a TF2 unlock,
Okay, so-
we'll see how they compare. You could argue that the incendiary cannon in TFC is closer
That's the same.
functionality-wise to the scorch shot in TF2, but the flare gun is kind of like the base version of that, so we'll stick to the flare gun. And the
Oh,
incendiary
is it
cannon
gonna matter?
is effectively just a weaker version of the rocket launcher used for igniting targets from a distance. The incendiary cannon is capable of firing roughly every 1.14 seconds, never has to reload, and holds 20
Sure.
reserve ammo.
Never
Compared
has
the
to
flare gun, which only
reload.
fires every 2 seconds and holds 16 ammo. The incendiary cannon is also capable of dealing more damage than the flare gun with its direct hit.
With
But
direct hit,
it's
though.
also capable of dealing less. Yeah, interestingly, the direct damage from the rockets is somewhat random. According to the
What?
wiki, it could range from
You have
30
no
to
damage
60,
fall off, but
I've
random
had it go as low as
on that?
20. And while the direct hit damage can be random, the splash damage always seems to be 20. Those rockets will explode on contact with players and surfaces, and that splash radius is actually pretty massive.
Yeah,
but this
that is
explosion
kinda
doesn't really
big.
seem to cause much self-knockback, so you're not really going to be able to
You
rocket
can't jump
with
with. You can't rocket
and
jump.
Afterburn
What?
from the incendiary cannon is just as weak as we talked about before.
Regular afterburn.
It only lasts for 4 seconds, so it only has a total of 8 damage. The flare gun's afterburn lasts for 7.5 seconds for a total of 60. And the incendiary cannon's rockets, they're pretty slow. Both versions of 2 Fort are about the same length, and it takes the flare gun's flare 0.46 seconds to hit from the opposite side. A rocket from the incendiary cannon takes more than 2 full seconds longer at 2.49 seconds. You could get up, you could do some stretches, you could file your taxes, and by the time you get back, well,
your taxes.
2.49
Nah, it takes way too long to do that.
I mean, come on, don't be ridiculous. But though in the context of TF2, that's
So
an
just a
extremely
slow
slow
projectile
projectile
TF2.
that I can't imagine makes direct contact with enemies very often. But the incendiary cannon is clearly meant more for choke point spam rather than direct damage.
Choke point
This
spam.
is
That just
roughly
sounds
how
like
its
a
stats would
great
look as a
time.
secondary unlock in TF2 based off the flare gun stats. And that might seem like an excessive amount of stats, because
Look
it
at that
is,
projectile
but I
speed.
felt like they were all notable enough to include. The upsides of this weapon would all be great, but the downsides would also be really bad. It explodes on surfaces, it fires relatively fast compared to the flare gun,
Man,
and
a
has
big
a big explosion
radius.
radius. But, with how weak the Afterburn is, how relatively weak the splash damage is, and how extremely slow the projectile is, I don't think it would be anything more than just a very mild annoyance. And it would certainly be overshadowed by the Scorch Shot, with its faster projectile, knockback, and much better Afterburn. And even compared to the flare gun, which lacks any explosion radius,
I use Pyro
I don't
all
think I
the
could say
time.
that the incendiary cannon would even
Like
be
when
better
the
for
stream just
spam.
isn't going well, I'm
And
just like,
going
I'm
into
switching
this,
to Pyro.
I thought it was going to be much better than it is, but the incendiary cannon is honestly not very good. Yeah, you can hit splash damage pretty easily, but
It's
that's
the projectile
20
speed
damage
that's
with
so
8
bad.
Afterburn. The flare gun's flare already does more than that on its own, and then it deals Afterburn after that. And it crits burning players. Yeah, TFC technically wins this round by default because the incendiary cannon is a default weapon, but TF2 gets the symbolic victory here because the flare gun is just better overall.
Huh?
And this is
I was so
the
confused.
last weapon round.
Flamethrower.
The Flamethrower against the Flamethrower. And because these things throw flames, neither can be used underwater. They just produce harmless bubbles.
Oh, they
In
actually
both
do
games,
bubbles?
They carry 200 maximum ammo, but in TFC it takes about 30 seconds to use it all up, while on TF2 it only takes 21.3 seconds.
Oh.
And while both weapons have limited range, the TFC's Flamethrower has a further reach. The
Of course
TFC
it does.
version also has 50% damage fall off, where the TFC version has no fall off at all. Which would make you think that the TFC version has the clear range advantage, and while that would make sense, that's actually not how it works out. The flamethrowers in both games are definitely not the most consistent weapons, and the average time it took to deal 100 damage varied for both. So for both weapons, I did it 5 times so we could kind of figure out an average.
Okay.
At close range
still a
for the
small
TFC
sample size.
flamethrower, I got 0.58 seconds, 0.38 seconds, 1.47 seconds,
What?
0.56
Close
seconds,
range?
and 0.34 seconds, which averages out to 0.666 seconds.
That's cursed.
In TF2, I got
Get that off the screen.
1.15, 1.11, 1.16, and 1.11, which averages out to 1.138.
TF2, you're supposed to be better here in close
hypothetically,
range.
the TFC flamethrower is better at the closest range. But you'll notice that the numbers vary a lot more than they did for TF2, and at medium range, it gets even worse.
Just
For
within
TF2's
like
medium
5
range,
100ths
I
of a
got
second.
1.38, 1.3, 1.36, 1.35, and 1.38 for an
All
average
within
of
8 hundredths of a
1.354.
second.
But for TFC, I got 2.05, 3.34, 2.04,
What?
2.04
TFC
again,
usually has
and
better range.
7.05.
What
That's
happened
an
on
average
that?
of 3.304. And even if we consider that 7.05 seconds a fluke, the average of the other 4 is 2.37, which is still
Which is
way
still
worse
a
than what TF2
second.
got. So how is it possible that it does worse at longer range if TFC has no fall off?
But what?
Well, to start, as you might have noticed, the TFC flamethrower has oddly high knockback, so you have to adjust to how it pushes the target. But also, the flame hitboxes are so much smaller in TFC. Despite how big they might look visually, they're not big at all. This is how close you need to be to hit fire in TF2. Look how far away the crosshair is from the target. And this is how close you need to be to hit it in TFC. It's hard to explain just how awkward the flamethrower feels in this game if you haven't played it. The flames look bigger than they actually are, they're not transparent at all, so you can barely see the target, and there's no hit sound, so you can barely get any kind of feedback.
The person's still alive, I'm pretty sure.
Just to demonstrate how much easier and more consistent the TF2 flamethrower is, flailing the TFC flamethrower at medium range killed in 4.38 seconds,
Flailing.
and doing it in TF2 killed in 1.36 seconds. Not only is that much faster, but it's also completely in
I'm
line
thinking
with the
TF2 is probably going to win
non-medium
this
range
one.
damage.
I mean, I'm always going to pull for
The
TF2
TF2 flamethrower
over
is also
TFC.
able to shoot through multiple enemy players and buildings, while the TFC flamethrower cannot. And
Oh,
if that
this is
wasn't
definitely
enough,
going
the
to TF2 then.
flamethrower only ignites targets for 4 seconds, which is the minimum time the TF2 flamethrower can ignite. And as we've talked about before, TF2 Afterburn is way better. And if all that wasn't enough to convince you the direction this is going, the TF2 Flamethrower has Air Blast,
Jesus,
while the TFC
tired.
one doesn't. It lets the user push enemies back, reflect projectiles,
which
and
counters
extinguish teammates,
grenade.
all of which are super useful abilities to have. Air Blast hasn't always been in TF2, but it has been for the vast majority of the game's existence, and it gives the TF2 Flamethrower so many options that the original one is just not at all capable of. Ignoring the damage differences in the smaller fire hitbox, this is roughly how the TFC Flamethrower would look in TF2.
Do not penetrate.
And this would just be terrible. So this round pretty overwhelmingly goes to TF2.
Which means TF2 is going to win this.
And that brings us to the final round.
What is the final round?
Who wins 1v1? Let's take a look at some of the major pros and cons of each version. The TF2 Pyro has generally more powerful weapons. Notably, the shotgun would be especially useful against an
also Pyro melee
enemy.
is just never used.
The TF2 Flamethrower is also much more consistent and easier to get damage.
Don't even consider that.
And probably most importantly, the Flamethrower has Air Blast, which gives the TF2 Pyro much more control of how close the TFC Pyro can get, and can reflect the TFC Pyro's projectiles.
And grenades.
But on the other hand, the TFC Pyro has more mobility with bunny hopping and grenade jumping. The TFC Pyro even has the range advantage,
but Air
with a
Blast.
slightly further Flamethrower reach, and the lack of damage fall off on the shotgun. And probably most importantly,
more health.
the original Pyro is a lot bulkier. She's just able to tank more damage before dying. The absolute best case scenario for the TF2 Pyro killing the TFC one would actually not be with the Flamethrower, but with the shotgun at the closest range, killing in 3 hits in roughly 1.18 seconds. And going off the absolute best time I got for the TFC Flamethrower, the TFC Pyro could hypothetically kill the TF2 one in roughly 0.595 seconds if those flames consistently connect. And as super specific as that setup might be, it still does give the best case time advantage to TFC. So yes, in the absolute best case scenario for each class, the TFC Pyro wins. But that requires perfect aim and for the TF2 Pyro to be doing basically nothing. So that's why I gotta say that I think TFC loses this one.
Yeah, I'm about to say.
The TF2 Pyro
he had
is
me
the
in the
winner
first
of
half.
The third round of
What?
TF2 versus TFC. So it's my understanding that in TFC, the Pyro is considered to be a particularly weak class.
Oh god, don't stress me out like that,
The TFC Scout
dude.
was really weak offensively. Dealing damage wasn't his job. The TFC Pyro is seemingly an offensive class, but one that lacks good damage-dealing weapons.
Okay, just
and
let the spies do their
range
thing.
That really doesn't even have very good close-range options. The TFC Pyro doesn't even have the double-barreled shotgun, which most of the classes in TFC have. And look, I don't think it would be impossible for the TFC Pyro to ever beat the TF2 one, but you'd have to be pretty cheesy about it. If I had to put a somewhat arbitrary number on this, I would say it would maybe be like 35-65 in TF2's favor. Heavy versus heavy would maybe be like 55-45 for TFC.
Wow,
and
yeah,
Scout
it was
Scout
really
is
close.
Like 5.95.
Yeah.
I guess it would be possible by pure luck that the TFC Scout wins at least once. But
maybe.
I think if the TFC Pyro just constantly ran away and got chip damage with the shotgun,
like Deadliest
maybe
Warrior.
some splash damage with projectiles, you could eventually wear the TF2 Pyro down enough to approach.
Oh, poor spy.
You could also try to brute force your way to victory with armor and simply out-damage the TF2 Pyro, but Air Blast shuts that down pretty well. And despite having less weapons, I think the TF2 Pyro has so many more options, especially because of Air Blast. Not only does Air Blast make
yet to use the jetpack
projectiles more dangerous, but it also prevents the TFC Pyro from getting close. It also can't be overstated how much easier to use and more consistent the TF2 Flamethrower is. I don't care how good that TFC Pyro's aim is, even in a purely WM1 battle, I think the TF2 Pyro still wins pretty easily. Maybe not every single time, but it would definitely be an uphill battle for TFC.
Well, the engineer saw nothing.
Things that the Pyro in TF2 still isn't that great, but in the transition between games and the many updates since then, the TF2 Pyro has become much stronger and more versatile than it was in TFC. And regardless of how you feel about Pyro, I think we have a much better class.
It's a head with a pan.
So yeah, in a head-to-head between the two of them, I think Beatrice over here would probably meet the same fate she did in the comics.
Excuse me! I'm in need of medical attention!
Who is
and that
voicing?
was the Pyro vs. Pyro video. Thanks for watching, and a special thanks to my patrons like Varric, Captain Forrest,
here's his patrons,
Dex,
which is awesome.
Capponicus,
I think
Kelso.
I don't think I need to sit through this, but shout out to those patrons. I also have a Patreon. The original video is going to link down below. So next week's going to be the Sniper, which literally came out 7 hours ago at the time of recording. So that video will be out next week. I hope that you're subscribed, because you all have been showing support for these videos, and thank you so much for that. Patrons get them a day early, and I don't know what I'm going to do for TF2 afterwards. I think this past Friday I did TF2 versus Overwatch Explained with Food, which has been requested for so long, and I'm finally getting around to doing it. So that is awesome. I'm glad that TF2 Pyro actually won this. I remember when I first started playing TF2, Pyro was my nemesis. It was the very last class that I ever tried playing, and it was my absolute nemesis to play. But now I play Pyro all the time. It's one of my most played classes just because it's so, I guess it's just kind of like brain dead, or at least like when things aren't going your way, Pyro can at least like even the playing field a little bit. Because like I'll be streaming and I'll be playing, and like if whenever I play sniper, I have to use it's not the danger shield, it's the Razorback, because I'm just gonna get targeted by spies. And like if I play any class, if I play heavy, I'm gonna get targeted by spies. People target me because I'm playing with viewers. So, which I mean, it is what it is. I would rather play with viewers and get targeted than not play with viewers. But just if things aren't going well, like I can't hit a shot with sniper, or scout's just not getting any damage for me, switch to Pyro. Have a great time playing as Pyro, but that's just how my Friday streams go. You're more than welcome to join. I'm always talking to chat. I'm also playing with viewers all the time. That happens at 5 p.m. on Fridays Eastern Standard Time. You can join my Discord server and get notified there. You can also follow me on Instagram and Twitter and join my Discord server. Like I said, it's completely free to do that. And subscribe to this channel or the gaming channel or whatnot. But I hope you have a great, wonderful rest of the day. But until the next video, take care and cue the music.
We were playing